Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Moses. I'm the founder of Sick Futures Collective and the host of this podcast, The Future is Sick. Today, I'm in conversation with someone who is just an absolute joy and also a badass, and who is also part of our Sick Futures world, and that is Cat Polston. Um, Kat is a disabled public servant and a former social worker who is dedicated to advancing housing stability, equity, and community well being. All of these many things that we so desperately need. Um, Her decade in social work continues to inform her current work in public administration, and she focuses there on making government programs more accessible, more transparent, more humane, all of these other many things that we so desperately need. And so I am just honored to have her here today. So, hi, Kat. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and for being down to do this. I know that it can be nerve-wracking and intimidating to come on to any old show. The first question that I wanted to ask you just to kind of get into it, like straight out of the gate, is what was the very first thing you encountered that really started you on this journey of chronic illness and or disability? Like where was that first little moment, even if you didn't realize it was that first moment when it happened?
Oh wow, that's a really good question. I think probably from my own experience, I was sick as a teenager and I would get sick pretty often, but I would always like dismiss it and I was just like throwing up every day and I was like, that's just something quirky about me. I just throw up randomly. Um, I think with that, started trying like talking to other folks and then being like, that's not actually normal. Like, you're not supposed to do that. And then started, really when I hit adulthood, um, went into trying to find answers. I was unsheltered as a youth when I was like 18, 19, kind of into my 20s. And so, really not focusing on myself or my health, just kind of focusing on, hanging out with friends or finding a place to sleep or, finding a place to hang out. And so for me, like, I really ignored a lot of the symptoms I was having, through that. Um, and it wasn't until I was 25 that I got health insurance and I started exploring because everything was just getting worse and worse and worse, kind of to the point that it wasn't really ignorable anymore. And thankfully, my partner was like really supportive and he was like, yeah, you need to like figure out what's wrong. So went to get a colonoscopy, ended up having Crohn's disease.
Ugh.
Um, it was like a click moment, like, oh my gosh, so this is what's been like ailing me this whole time. This was not just quirkiness or like, it's like a lot of blaming myself, like, oh, it must have been something I ate, or, it's been so long since I've eaten something. Maybe it was just like my body couldn't handle it, or, um, it wasn't like healthy, or, just anything like that. So I felt like I finally had answers. But so with that, I really recognized a lot of the judgment and a lot of the assumptions, that people have in the community, like about chronic illness, So when I would get ill and stuff, it would be like, what did you eat? The things that I would always punish myself with, like people would then question me, like, and
Mm.
oh, have you ever heard of trying this? Like, have you ever tried this supplement? Or have you tried this? And so with that, I was like realizing that there was a lot of misinformation,
Mhm.
just like in the world just about what illness looks like and what healing looks like. And in my work as a social worker, meeting other clients that also had illnesses that didn't have access to also finding out what was happening with them, really motivated me to like try to break down those barriers so that folks could access care and could find out what was happening with them. Just like much how I did, coming from an unstable environment, into like, trying to help have health and healing, while also still struggling with like trauma and like life, and all of that. So it's been wild. Yeah, but
Truly.
yeah,
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, it has me thinking about, trying to explain to someone like why you weren't in a place where you could just be like fully focused on your health. And that like to people who aren't in like a constant fight or flight state,
yeah,
that it's like trying to explain that like wasn't really on my mind, like
yeah,
wasn't top of my mind to be like, I should figure out how to get to a doctor. It's really like I need to figure out if I'm going to be able to sleep somewhere tonight, or
yeah,
like how to make the abuse stop, or
yes, yeah,
like all of the many other things that typically like need to get contained and quieted down before we even feel safe enough to like think about anything else.
yeah, yeah. Really, that survival mode is just, it's kind of incredible. The self-preservation that your body does and your mind does to just be
Yeah,
like, everything's fine,
I
just so
know.
you can continue surviving. Um, and then when you do take that pause, when you do take that moment, or when you do find stability and you start, like, oftentimes I find that people get more ill,
Yeah.
and they get sicker because then finally they're in a place where they can like genuinely rest. And so things that they wouldn't have necessarily noticed, they're noticing, because of coming out of that survival instinct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's definitely what happened to me. Like, once when I started getting more stable,
Mhm.
I started getting more sick. And I was just like, this is so weird. Like, but it was like my body was like screaming, like, hey, it's time, and then like, but
Yeah.
then also being young and not even knowing like how to access care or where to
Right.
access care,
Right.
like figuring out navigating the healthcare system is just
Yeah.
such a nightmare. Like, I go
Yeah.
to my regular doctor says you need a specialist. The specialist is like, I need to start doing tests, then you're having to call off work so that you can take these
Yeah.
tests, it's too much. And a lot of people give up in that process and they think like it would be easier to just continue to live, you know, ill than
Hmm.
actually seeking an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really is like for those who didn't grow up with like some kind of example of like, here's how you find healthcare. Here's how you get established with healthcare. Or here's the benefit of having an established primary care physician. Like all of these things you don't know. And then when you're out in the world and trying to survive as a youth, and you're like, I don't even, why would I spend extra money on something that I don't need? Or like, I don't even know how to get it if I could. Like,
Yeah.
where do I even start?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what was the catalyst, or kind of how did you initially start getting looped into like how to get health insurance, or even how to use it, or if you had it, like how to establish a doctor, all of these things, because it is such a mystifying system if you've never been involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, finally having a stable job and like a career. Like my first job in social work, was the first time that like I had health insurance, which even just opened that door for me. And then like working, I mean, like thankfully I was a medical assistant first, so I did start
Ah,
learning the healthcare system,
mhm.
from that side. But yeah, it really wasn't until I got into social work that I had solid health insurance. When you're a medical assistant, they kind of don't tell you this. They don't give you health insurance. They just say you get to see our doctors like when they have time for you. So I was just like being
Whoa.
treated by the doctors that I was working for a long time. But that was very like very basic, like sick visits, like you need
Yeah.
antibiotics so that you can continue working.
Right.
But so having like actual health insurance and being able to like
Yeah.
actually have like a doctor outside of the ones I was working for really changed things for me. But really like for me and what happened with my illness was that I got so sick I couldn't eat anything. I wasn't holding anything down. I
Okay.
wasn't able to like go one day with um anything in my stomach. And
Oh.
so by the time I ended up going to a primary care physician and they referred me to the gastroenterologist, like I've always been overweight. I've always been a big girl, but I lost like 30 pounds like
Oh.
within a few months. And so it was like unintentional weight loss in that
Yeah.
like I was only drinking like protein shakes
Yep.
and like
Yep.
the Bolt House like green juices and stuff.
Yes.
And even that, I mean, I wasn't holding it down, but it was like I was just trying to get liquid into like that had some kind of nutrients.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was like, wow, I can't keep living like this. Like that was the first time that I was like, oh man, I might like die from this. Like
Mm.
something's really bad.
Yeah.
And so it was like steroids and hospital visits
Mm.
later to get me like stabilized. Then they were like, okay,
Yeah.
formalized colonoscopy, then diagnosis. And but even through that process was just everything was just kind of so shocking, like through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it was not something I was really prepared for. And I didn't think that it was going to be like a chronic illness or like Crohn's disease. Like I thought that
Yeah.
there might just be something like, happening like a virus or whatever. And like that's
Yeah.
kind of how they started me off too, was like, you might have H. pylori. Let's have you do a
Mm.
breath test. So I went through all of these other tests,
Yeah.
just like for nothing, just for it to be. But so I was like, I was convinced that it was something like short term.
Yeah.
So then like having this long term kind of diagnosis, that was really like uh the life kind of altering, like realizing denial, very much a grieving process that I was like, no, I don't have that. And then, accepting it, but then being upset. Like I even told we had just gotten married, my husband and and I was just like, if you
Yeah.
need to divorce me, like
Oh
I
no.
understand. And he was like, absolutely not, like sickness and health, right? Like,
Yeah.
because like really what kicked off like getting so ill was like on our honeymoon,
Oh.
which was really sad. But, I went to the hospital, you know, after that. He's been such like a rock and so supportive through all of my illnesses. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, because that was like the first one, but I've been diagnosed with other things, and it's
Right.
always kind of like one of those things like when you do start exploring one aspect of your health, that other aspects of your
Yeah.
health kind of start also unwinding, that you're realizing like,
Mhm.
oh, like, well, that's connected to this and this is connected to that and that's why this hurts and that's why, um
Right.
yeah, so definitely not expected. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, that the like shame and guilt of having a disability or chronic illness is it's exhausting. It's like we know it now and we know when it kind of rears its head and we can be like, go away. Like
Yeah.
just leave us alone. But it comes
Yeah.
up in so many different ways and it's so frustrating to see the social pressure of this definition of disability as dependency and then
Yeah.
dependency as a social failure. And then us embodying that and being like, oh my God, you're going to leave. I'm a burden. It's going to be too much to deal with. Yada, yada, yada. All of the things that spin through our minds because they've been depicted in so many, many different ways throughout our lives and throughout society.
Yeah.
And then the other one, the frustrating one, is that unintentional weight loss is so scary because it at least in my experience, it happens so fast. Like
Yeah.
it's like you blink and suddenly you're like, "Oh my God, I'm not okay."
Yeah.
And then you get this social like call and response of people being like, "You look
You look so
great."
great. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, "Thanks, I'm dying."
Yeah.
Like,
And that was for me, I mean, like, because having always been like chubby and overweight, like pretty much my whole life, I was getting a lot of compliments, like, oh wow,
ugh,
you're losing a lot of weight, like you're looking really good.
oh
And I was
God.
like, this isn't my fault. Like I'm not doing anything
Yeah,
specific, but almost
right.
like the validation, like because you're meeting some kind of societal expectation or like
Yeah,
standard, when really, yeah, it's just illness. And it's just like
yeah,
I don't actually necessarily want this. It's like, yes, I'm enjoying that I'm getting this benefit, but the reason or causation behind it is
yeah,
like not healthy at all, you know.
right.
But it's like that society still values it more because like, you're
Yeah.
still just like meeting the standard, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, I know. It's like as opposed to being like, cool, I'm extremely sick. And then people will be like, that doesn't matter because you look
You look
good.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Being like,
Yeah.
no, we're not, we're not on the same page.
Yeah.
Please. Oh gosh. Well, and I also, I want to talk about kind of your experience going into social work and going into housing. Um, and like coming at it from all of your experiential knowledge. And I think also then with that lens of chronic illness and disability being like, oh, like how do I support my clients or support this community or support my community in a way that's like much more multifaceted than maybe some other housing programs or kind of I don't know, like 101 housing knowledge kind of gives you. Like,
Mm.
what was your approach with all of your experience when going into that?
Yeah, I mean, going into social work was very personal to me. I was sent away as a youth to an institution
Oh,
called Cross Creek Programs. There's a really good documentary on Netflix about it called The Program,
ooh,
Con, Cults, and Kidnapping. Um, so I was a victim of trafficking into another state to be into a program.
wow.
When I got out of that program, I really took that experience and wanted to make something of it that was positive. So I wanted to give back. My experience, I mean, it really led me to being like, I need to seek therapy, like actual therapy, not like, program manipulative, abusive type therapy.
Sorry.
But getting into therapy and actual therapy, um, really is what motivated me to like really start giving back in the way. I wanted to specifically work with like teens and youth,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I wanted to prevent like teens and youth going to the same kind of programs that I went to,
Right.
from ever happening to anyone else in the future. Because I felt like a lot of youth behavior, normal youth behavior, um, there's people out there that prey on that to be like they're gonna end up dead in the street, like
Ugh.
which was very much the manipulation tactic that was used on my family to me just being a regular teenager and hanging out with my friends and experimenting ended up being like labeled as, troubled or, that I was going to lead to other more significant issues.
Wow.
Um, so really teens and youth were like my niche, and that's the demographic I really wanted to work with. And so I started working as a parent aide.
Mm.
So I was working with families who their children had been removed by DCS
Mm.
and working to try to reunify. So I would do parenting classes using
Hmm.
the nurturing parent curriculum, which was an evidence-based model, which really is like foundation in like, working with your children, setting up safe like boundaries for them to explore like healthily, positive reinforcement and praise. And it kind of goes through all stages of life. So like from really that like birth to five, and then really that teen years and how your relationship changes with your children as they age and like how to
Mhm.
meet them where they're at in any kind of aspect.
Mhm.
And that training, I mean, was so phenomenal for me. And when I would teach parenting classes, I would really just see it click for the parents too. Because a lot of times, like I always say, like, parenting is one of the hardest jobs in the world, but there's no rule book or there's no playbook. There's nothing that comes with it. We just base our parenting based off of our parenting, how we were parented. So it's like
Mhm.
oftentimes we don't have our own style. We're just perpetuating like previous styles, right? That we observed or that happened with us. And so with that, working with that demographic, really trying to reunify families and build families back together in like a lot more positive and reinforced kind of like family system.
Mhm.
And I really felt like that through that, it helped me kind of like also reconcile a lot of the hurt and pain that I had.
Mhm.
Like seeing other people have those breakthroughs and stuff was like so motivational for me.
Yeah.
Like, even though I wasn't going to experience it myself, if I could prevent, you know, trauma or like additional trauma in any other families, like that was really my motivation. So like with that, my experiences is, in that program and then afterwards, not being stably housed.
Mhm.
Um, that's what really was like housing was kind of uh like a no nonsense. It was like a great transition for
Yeah.
me because I was like, all right, I've helped people like in their kids. Now I need to help people like with housing because it was like that was my progression too, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was like I was getting stable like mentally, emotionally, I was getting stably housed. And it was like something that I really just wanted for other folks in my community. And I really wanted people to be able to navigate the systems that I've had to navigate more easily because it is so
Mhm.
difficult. And so um like really the way that I approach social work is very trauma informed and like person centered and always meeting the client like where they're at.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I think, as professionals, we get caught up in like jargon and lingo and all of those things. And we forget that they don't know any of that. Like this is their first time. And so even if this might be like my thousandth client, they still don't know anything. So it's like I
Yeah.
always have to make sure that I like take the time to like take a step back and like reintroduce all of these concepts to every single client every single time. And so really making that transition like into government and public service kind of wasn't by like my own choice. I got laid off during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
My program closed because it lost its funding. And so I
Wild.
was laid off, and I had been with them for almost 10 years. And so that was
Wow.
devastating. But with
Yeah.
that came like new motivation for me because I was like, you know what? I'm going to go work for the government now and I'm going to make a change on the other side and I'm not going to cut programs and so with that like I do found like my power is like not obviously like I'm not the mover and shaker that like I was hoping to be. Um
Right.
but like with that I have learned to be able to like know what fights we can fight and what
Yeah.
policies we can advocate for, what programs we can like advocate for. um and I always wanted to be the government worker who cared. So it's
Yeah.
like always making sure that I'm still doing those things that I learned from social work. Like why I think it was such a good and seamless transition for me is that it does come from like that program experience. So like
Mhm.
working with clients in direct care and learning how to like take a step back and like teach them things where they're at is the
Mhm.
same thing with working with subrecipients, because they don't understand federal rules and they don't understand federal programs. And it's like, and I
Right?
saw that myself, like working at nonprofits. So
Yes.
then on the other hand, being like, okay, I need to be the one to teach them these things so that they can be better service providers for the community.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to ask, like, with your experience working in government, and I worked for years doing legislative policy, and so trying to really like push some policies forward or completely halt others. But I wanted to ask, from your experience, and especially looking at it through a disability lens, like, what do you feel that people really misunderstand about how policy decisions actually show up in daily life and like where their importance really lies? Because I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't have to pay attention, I don't have to vote, life will be the same no matter what. We live under, you know, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, all of these things. But, you know, what does that day-to-day minutia look like? And then especially through a disabled lens, how is it playing out? How is it affecting us?
Yeah. Oh, what a great question. The thing that bothers me the most is that people don't understand that policy dictates literally everything in their life.
Mhm.
Like it actually is so much bigger. It actually is all encompassing.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, especially when we talk about local level, like we can, a lot on the federal level, we can kind of ignore.
Hmm.
It dictates like much larger kind of projects or much larger kind of like scope. But local policy and local elections are so imperative. Like like local policy is what's going to dictate everything about your life
Right.
at any given time on any given day. Like where we decide to build schools, where we decide to have sidewalks, and if those sidewalks have to have ramps, like all of that is dictated in policy, and that's all dictated essentially like on your local level. Um, and so I wish that people like knew how much like I it bothers me when folks are like, I don't want to talk about politics. And it's like, well, then
Hmm.
we literally can't talk about anything because
Correct. It's all
everything is
politics.
political.
Yeah.
It's like, who goes to what schools, who builds who's like housing, like, housing, where housing is built is all
Hmm.
dictated in policy. And it's like if it is a federal project, it has to adhere to certain guidelines. Like they're not allowed to build like near a landfill, but private equity doesn't have to follow the same rules. So like
Hmm.
they're like potentially exposing people to toxic
Yeah.
waste and to toxicities that they don't all like have to adhere by the same kind of like rules and regulations. So it's
Ugh.
like they can get away with a lot more. And
Hmm.
so it's like, if you're living next to a landfill and then 20 years from then you get cancer, who are you going to try to hold accountable? Like, because if you don't know that connection, even that this private equity came in and was able to do that. So it's like everything
Yeah.
is political, everything is about policy.
Mm.
So it's like if we had, if there was legislation that said it doesn't matter if you're private equity, you can't build next to a landfill, that could like, really save people's lives, improve their health outcomes like exponentially. So it's like
Yeah.
a lot of what I think, especially with like disability justice, like folks who are suffering from, poor policy, um,
Hmm.
pollution, environmental policies, which
Hmm.
often have been like, ignored or not really like essentially like well funded, right?
Yeah.
Directly impact most vulnerable populations like youth and
Yeah.
elderly, and then also folks with living with disabilities like are
Mhm.
always going to be like our most vulnerable communities are always going to be the victim of poor policy creation,
Mhm.
always.
Mhm. Yeah.
Bums
No,
me
I mean
out.
it's miserable. It's kind of, you know, it's like once you peel open that first layer of anything and you realize that, you know, the people who are like closest to the fire are the ones who have always been closest to the fire. It's,
Yeah,
you know, poor communities where they're like, "Oh, we're going to put a landfill over here."
yep,
Or, you know, thinking about Cancer Alley running through parts of New Orleans
yeah,
or like big oil and parts of Houston and just kind of the Gulf in general, and
yeah,
understanding that like, you know, those those were built there and things happened either through private equity or through poor policy decisions, and usually a combination of both.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
absolutely. Like the redlining, and like even when we look at maps, like I'm from Phoenix and I live in Tucson now, but in the industrial areas of Phoenix,
Mhm.
that's where like communities were redlined into. So it's like directly related to poor health outcomes
Yeah.
was because of forcing, historically disenfranchised folks and
Hmm.
historically marginalized communities into these areas that were known toxic sites for industrialization,
Right.
like directly caused poor like health outcomes,
Hmm.
poverty, you know, unshelteredness, being unsheltered,
Hmm.
unemployment. All of those are like it is all systemic,
Hmm.
and it's just like you know, society treats it almost as like a moral failing, but it is a policy
Hmm.
failure
Right.
or it's policy design.
Right. Well, and then there's so much emphasis on the individual of being like, well, now that you know this, why don't you just move?
Yeah,
Being
and
like, I
it's
don't know,
like
because
not
this,
accessible.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like,
like
because
I
there's,
can't.
yeah, just four generations of my family
Yes.
currently exist here. I don't
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
then also understanding that, that's a form of kind of sticking it to them as well by being like,
Yeah.
well, screw you for doing this to us, but we are staying put where our life and our family exist and what we built it in.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, truly getting cozy with policy or understanding policy and the way that it gets carried out is a lot of power and a lot of intellect to be able to hold
Yeah.
and carry forward. I have spent like years and years and years of my life just like writing policy testimonials like
Yeah.
either for myself or other people, being like, narrative is one of the most powerful ways that you can sway policymakers. If you
Yes.
have a story that is directly impacted by the policy that is trying to be passed or not passed, and you can submit that, do it because
Yeah.
it holds so much weight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish, I mean, it's almost, I mean, we know systemically like it is set up to be not accessible, right? Like
Yeah.
laws and bills and policies are all
Mhm.
written, by lawyers and they're not,
Yep.
accessible to people. And so it's like, I think it is so important to have folks that are willing to advocate to really break down those things
Yeah.
into terms that folks can understand to meet the communities where they're at.
Hmm.
It's like it to me it always can is very telling about like local elections and local policies if they
Yeah.
do actually want the community to be invested or know about it based on
Hmm.
how it's written or how they're presenting the policy.
Yeah.
But I do wish that there would be more emphasis, on local elections for folks to
Hmm.
to to have access to understand like
Yeah.
how it will impact them and how it will affect their life. It's
Yeah.
just it's I wish. I
I
wish.
know. I know. Yeah, it's like it's this twofold thing where we're like these systems and structures are immensely flawed. And then at the same time, you can make some real tangible change at the local level
Yeah.
with your city commissioners, with your county commissioners, with your city council people, whatever the term is in your particular municipality. It's so, so important to be like, I'm a squeaky wheel in the
Yep.
city of Portland who's
Yeah.
going to talk about all sorts of stuff to my, city councilors. And
Yeah.
it's an important role while also at the same time being like, okay, what are some other types of structures that could exist that could better serve the people, that
Yeah.
could better serve, you know, Black, Indigenous, disabled, trans, femme, queer, all of these folks that is not currently in place. And what does that look like? What do we do standing exactly where we're at right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
It's my wish.
I know. Yeah, truly. It's like we've got some ideas
Yeah.
that we are attempting to put into place and to move forward.
Yeah.
Um, I do wonder because, thinking about how do we alter these systems, I, I want to ask you kind of where you see like mutual aid, right?
Mm.
And not just like crowdfunding, which I feel like a lot of people think mutual aid is just crowdfunding, which it is
Yeah.
not. It's shared skills, shared resources, all of these things. And then like mutual aid and public systems tension. And then
Yeah.
like where do you see those things working together and, where do you see those things butting heads?
Um, my hope is always that they work together.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think like systemically they are kind of built to not. And so I think first and foremost, dismantling the like kind of preconceived notion that they are separate things.
Hmm.
What you said that I love that I especially in times where there is lack of funding and there
Hmm.
is like not any investment into communities, especially like on the federal level, is interdependence and mutual
Yeah.
aid,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like we need to depend on each other when we don't have anyone else to depend on.
Mm.
And when your federal administration is demonstrating that they are not interested or motivated in funding you in any type of way,
Hmm.
um, and they are cutting funding, working for the government, it's very what like what I've been yelling about is that we do need to partner with mutual aid. I
Yeah.
have been giving recommendations and feedbacks to nonprofits to work with each other.
Hmm.
The only way that like any type of aid, any type of support or programmings that we need and want in our communities will be sustained through this period is
Hmm.
interdependence and mutual aid. Um, so that interdependence piece is it's so important. I do think like, very much how you said that, this like GoFundMe is like the end all be all of mutual aid. And it's actually not true, like not at all. It's like because it doesn't always have to be monetary, it can be any which things. If someone is in need of food assistance and they
Yeah.
know how to sew,
Yep.
let me repair your pants for
Hmm.
some cans of food.
Yes.
Like really when community comes together, it can be great. And I think like there is an investment in our power structures for it to not be that way. Like there's a lot more investment in keeping folks divided and and fearful of each other than there
Right.
is to bring people together. But we do have examples of like, during times of hardship of like people coming together, and everyone needs to kind of like play their piece and play to their
Hmm.
own strengths and like come together to say like this is what I can offer and
Hmm.
then work through those things together as a community.
Amen. Yeah, no, I fully agree. It really is so much about understanding that we need each other. And
Yeah.
when we're like force-fed this idea that like I don't know, some scary amount of independence is the goal, that like you're just going to be alone on an island with all of your money and that's
Yeah,
like
right.
all you need to get by
Yeah.
is terrifying because we know it to be so untrue. We need people. We need one another. In fact, we don't just need one person. We need all sorts
All of
of
them.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's
And everyone has different strengths, and I think because of power structures and eugenics and
mm,
history, like, folks with disabilities oftentimes get neglected out of that conversation.
yeah.
But it's like again, like everyone has different strengths. Like
Mhm.
if someone knows how to knit, there's
Yeah.
all your warmth and your beanies and your blankets and your sweaters when it starts getting cold.
Yep.
Um, everyone has something to contribute.
Hmm.
And I think like that is also what power systems also don't want us to acknowledge,
Hmm.
um, is that right? Because it's like even the billionaire class, they rely on us,
Hmm.
to do labor for them.
Yep.
So it's like that why we already are interconnected, but we just
Hmm.
need to support and we need to find that community connection.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. I mean, and it is so exhausting to know that the ongoing narrative around disabled people is that we're disposable and that we're unproductive members of society who can't contribute and as a result need to be erased.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's like, nah, we're over here doing all sorts of stuff.
All the things.
Yeah.
It can't be farther from the truth. I personally have always experienced that folks with that are living with disabilities like feel an even more innate need to contribute to community. And
Yeah.
so it's like I know some of the most hard workers, are folks with disabilities because it's like they know that that connection is what's going to like strengthen relationships and community, so
Right.
it's like there are like the biggest contributors.
Right. And that it doesn't necessarily look like capitalist productivity
Yes.
contribution.
Yeah.
That it's not like, oh, we're contributing in the exact way that you're expecting everybody to contribute. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we have a lot more to give in a lot of different ways than whatever this current baby structure of society is playing out.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. Mm.
Capitalism.
Oh, I know. Yeah, God. Yeah. What a ride. Corporate capitalism, what a ride. It is
Yeah.
just, we're really on it right now. We're really trying to find some alternatives to it. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's, thinking of different like economic structures as well. I mean, things as simple as the gift economy or like the refusal economy of
Yeah.
being like, we refuse to do your labor. We
Yeah.
refuse to be consumers of your goods. And within that economy, the billionaire ruling class cannot exist. But it's like just understanding these different ways that economics can look,
Hmm.
where everybody gets to contribute and
Yeah.
everybody gets to have purpose and meaning simply for existing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh, yeah. I wondered too, like within within like operating as a social worker or operating as a civil servant, like what have you had to kind of unlearn about professionalism or productivity, or service delivery, especially as somebody who's disabled to like make it through the day in these
Mm.
settings?
Yes, that self-care. Self-care is absolutely pinnacle to social work, but I think even in corporate America, I
Mhm.
see burnout at a rate in corporate America that's just as bad as
Mhm.
like service providers.
Yeah.
But I do think that, I mean, really in the past, like maybe decade, I've really seen a shift in social work to really uphold, self-care and avoiding burnout and
Mm.
reflective supervision to like really support employees. Um, and it kind of ebbs and flows, like, sometimes things are very, challenging. And so like, you
Mhm.
know, or you're short staffed, and so like those things are always the first to like go out the door. But it's really like that's the only thing that's going to continue to actually get your clients met is to be able to like take care of the individual. But
Mhm.
you see in corporate America it's always that grind and they never talk about
Mhm.
that self-care piece, and so it's like you
Right.
see corporations and folks that work in corporations like absolutely 100% burnt out
Yeah.
and compassion fatigued at probably the same rate as social workers or similar. And it's like, just because it's different work, they don't recognize, like, they think like they don't need those same kind of things. So it's like folks with disabilities working in corporate America just need the same
Mhm.
amount of grace and care of like, reflective supervision and self care and, that social workers do. Like, I,
Mhm.
I really wish across the board, you know, um, that it was something that was more recognized and accepted. Like, I like mental health days became like a thing. It's like, it's not that I'm sick, I'm just not feeling it. And so it's
Yeah.
like, really I feel like in human services, that kind of became more acceptable. But, I really think it should be that people can just call in like healthy and just be like, I'm
Yeah.
actually doing good today, but I just like want to ride this high. Like, and that
Yeah.
should be accepted too. Or it's like,
Mhm.
you know, um, I really think that it's important to just meet people where they're at. like
Hmm.
regardless if, they are living with a disability or not. Being disabled, it's a community that like anyone can join at any time, right? It's like
Hmm.
you're one fall or you're like one
Yeah.
illness away from disability. And then it's like
Yeah.
oftentimes it is a community that we do end up joining naturally, like as our lives progress, right? Like
Yeah.
when mobility issues start to become a challenge or mental capacity starts becoming a challenge, like in senior years, like folks are working longer, folks are working
Hmm.
harder than really ever before.
Yeah.
But we really need that grace of
Hmm.
that self-care, of that ability to take time so that we avoid burnout. Um, you know, so that we avoid folks, quitting in rage or like, I the thing about capitalism is like, it's an ever like demanding cog.
Hmm.
Um, but my whole thing, and I say all the time, and I know it's kind of like messed up, but it's like if we're the cattle, like at least treat your cattle well, it's like because like and really in terms of cows too, we know that it's like if they are fed premium grasses and they get time to rest and they
Hmm.
have like roaming time, they produce a better product. So it's like same thing with human beings. We should be able to be treated with dignity and respect, to be able to have time off to be sick, to have time off to grieve if we lose someone, to have
Hmm.
time off if we have an injury or an illness, with no
Hmm.
pressure or expectation to like return or like you know um to just be able to have that rest period. And it's like
Yeah.
we see in other countries they have that, right? Paid maternal leave, paid paternal leave, all of those things, like, automatic weeks time off when you're sick.
Yeah.
Like it's an investment that companies need to make in their employees. And I think America has, really sold the lie of like grinding culture. So it's
Yeah.
like, but when we're grinding ourselves to nothing and then we become compassion fatigued and we become fatigued in general, or we're
Hmm.
experiencing burnout, the recovery time is even harder for that, whether you're
Yeah.
able-bodied or not.
Right.
So it's like giving that grace. And like I really wish that across the workforce in general, we were have better policy, right? Like
Hmm.
if ideally 4-day work week is full time so that people can have more time to rest and like be with their
Hmm.
families, experience joy, they will be more productive workers and they will feel better at the end of the day and they will be able to produce a better product.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's like, thinking about it in a really, really like long time frame of being like, why not the 3-day work week? Why not the 2-day work week? Why not getting to a place where like what we consider and understand to be work or labor is actually just the very things that are necessary for community and survival and care and taking care of the earth and the things that we are taking from it, and that it's
Hmm.
actually mutual and we get back to it. Like, when does productivity and labor turn itself back into, how are we doing things in a mutual way, both with one another and with the planet, with everything living? Um, because I agree that, the co-opting of self-care and the corporatization of self-care, where it's just then resold to you as like consumable goods,
Yes.
is it's just, it's tiring. And we can see,
Yeah.
we see what they're doing. Like we know we can
Hmm.
see it. It's pretty dang transparent at this point. But it's like, okay, taking a stand and actually practicing self-care that is true to you, which can look like things like a lot of rest, like
Yeah.
really taking a lot of rest, or like standing outside in nature and just taking it in, sitting in nature and just taking it in. Like whatever those self care practices look like, that we actually are given the time and space to do them. And then if we're not given the time and space to do that, then how do we shift things and take it because we need it? Like truly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're burning out your laborers. And then what are you gonna do when there's nobody left to do your dirty work in the
Yeah.
end?
And I feel like, I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic was really telling for that, like with
Yeah.
work and how work could be done. And it was just so sad to me that it was like then all these return to office orders, because it's like we did see during that time period, that the lack of cars on the roads, the lack of industrialization, like
Hmm.
constant, it's like that our world started repairing itself so
I
quickly.
know.
And like, you know,
Yeah.
people were able to have so much better of a work-life balance when they were able to work from home and fully remote. Work itself was more
Hmm.
accessible for folks,
Yeah.
so folks who, are, not able to go to an
Yeah.
office or that struggle
Right.
with mobility, right? Like
Hmm.
can absolutely have the capacity to work from home.
Yeah.
But then it was like with that like period where it was like this grace and like almost like corporate America like was like
Hmm.
realizing that this was like needed and wanted in the
Right.
workforce. And it was like that they had all these studies that like demonstrated that productivity doesn't actually like get any worse, and it's like actually in fact more productive when people, and it was like still, it was like
Yeah.
we still have to be an oppressive structure, so return to the office.
I
Like,
know.
you
Yeah, they're
know
like, sorry, we're not oppressing you enough. We
yeah.
realized. I know this all seems good, but
Yeah,
you're just not oppressed enough. So
enough. Yeah, and I
I
want to
think,
be able to talk to you whenever I want to at the water fountain, and we're spending a lot of money on rent for this building, you know
oh
but
my God. Yeah, no, yeah, it's like heaven forbid.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to, again, these hours, they just fly by. I
I'm
want to,
like, yeah.
yeah, I want to wrap up by asking the final question that I like to ask all of our guests, which is, to really to bring in that future thinking. When you imagine liberatory disabled futures, to you, what do they feel like? What do they look like? What do they sound like? And where do
Uh,
you already see maybe some little glimpses of them?
mm. I think first and foremost, housing for all. I think, it is a basic need. It is something that people need in order to feel safe and secure and to be able to start focusing on other aspects of their life.
Mhm.
So I think that housing needs to be recognized 100% as a human right and provided as a basic necessity.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, from there, it's like already I know that it's like, wow, that's radical. But already from there, like food, water, anything that a human being needs to be able to be sustained just basically in life, I personally am a proponent for it being provided.
Yeah.
Um, there's ways to do it with like taxation. But I think that there needs to be an investment in just caring for people for where they're at and what their ability is. There are people who have, that are living with disabilities that aren't able to work full time. So it's like not asking them to like to be able to contribute to society based on their capacity, and
Hmm.
the rest of society being okay with that and understanding that it's not a moral failure, that it's something that they need in order to contribute.
Hmm.
So it's like, everyone has something to offer. And so it's like allowing folks to be able to have the time, space, security, and safety to be able to offer that. And you know, uh, I would really love if we didn't have billionaires. I would really love reinvestment into our communities. I would really love to see, folks being able to participate freely, when they can, when they want to,
Hmm.
and no pressure for it. Like, I anytime that I kind of think of this, I always think of indigenous communities, that it like that cohabitation, interdependence, and community care.
Hmm.
It's like, folks who can do the hunting will do the hunting. Folks who can do the gathering will do the gathering. If you can't do any of that, you can sing, you know,
Yeah.
like just showing up for community, meeting people where they're at. Um, I think is really like my ideal society, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Agreed. I feel like we can get there, and I feel like we are getting there, and that there are definitely enough people on board to make it happen
Yeah.
for sure. Oh, well, Kat, thank you so much.
Oh,
It's
thank
been
you.
wonderful talking with you and getting to know you more and learning about your life and your history and all of it. I'm so grateful for you. So thank
Oh,
you.
well, mutual respect and admiration. I feel so blessed and honored to be a part of this.
Thanks so much. Oh, yeah, we're glad to have you. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon, and I hope you
Yeah,
have a really good rest of your night.
you too.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh. Well, that was just such a rich and wonderful conversation. Kat is truly incredible. Like, really, really. I mean, the way she thinks about systems and care and responsibility, like, all of these things really just remind me that disabled knowledge really truly is world building knowledge. Like time and time again, it is just what it is. And our communities, these communities, our disabled communities especially, have been imagining and building these many different ways that we can support one another beyond these current existing systems that clearly were not designed for us, and we are trying to make them better. Thank you all so much for listening to The Future is Sick. This podcast is an experiment in sick time, storytelling, and imagining futures together. If you enjoyed this episode, it really helps to share it, to follow the show, and to invite others into the conversation as well. You can find transcripts and more episodes at sickfuturescollective.org/podcast. And until next time, take care, rest when you need to, and remember, the future is sick.